The atmosphere of the quaint coastal town of Puerto Dorado enveloped Felipe Diaz, evoking a vivid sense of nostalgia. The scent of sea salt intertwined with the fragrance of bougainvilleas cascading along the colonial facades had slipped my mind. He navigated his Ranch Rover along the cobblestone streets, observing that some aspects remained constant, while others had transformed beyond recognition, much like himself. At 35 years old, Felipe had constructed a real estate empire that propelled him from his modest beginnings in this city to the towering heights of Madrid. He had come back solely for a short business trip, to satisfy his mother and participate in the yearly benefit of Samuel Vasconcelos, the most influential figure in the area. A mere social duty, nothing beyond that. The Vasconcelos mansion radiated elegance, illuminated by carefully positioned lights that accentuated its colonial architecture. Attendants with trays of sparkling champagne moved gracefully through a crowd adorned in tailored suits and exquisite jewelry. Felipe straightened his silk tie, a symbolic act of mental readiness rather than a practical one. These events had become a strategic play for him, where he understood precisely how to maneuver the elements. Felipe Diaz, you have finally graced us with your presence once more. Samuel Vasconcelos' voice resonated throughout the space. The elder, adorned in a tailored suit and silver locks, advanced with a smile that belied the shrewdness in his gaze. Samuel, Felipe said, shaking his hand firmly, it's good to be back, even if it's just for a short while. You've achieved remarkable things, my boy, your father would be proud, Samuel remarked, referencing Felipe's late father with the ease of someone who had witnessed both his strengths and vulnerabilities. Felipe merely nodded, familiar with the way his achievements were often weighed against the shadow of a man who had passed, leaving behind nothing but financial burdens and lingering resentment. Your invitation was quite compelling. You have always had a keen eye for spotting an opportunity. Samuel offered a mysterious smile before shifting his position slightly. You should definitely greet someone, do you recall my daughter? Felipe turned his attention to where Samuel was looking, and in that moment, it felt as if time had come to a standstill. The woman coming closer was unrecognizable as the timid girl he recalled, once flitting about the mansion's gardens in pursuit of butterflies. This woman glided with a captivating elegance, her emerald dress accentuating curves that sparked the imagination. Her dark hair cascaded in flawless waves over the sun-kissed skin of her exposed shoulders. Yet it was her eyes, reminiscent of whiskey glimmering in the light, that ensnared him, vivid, imbued with a sharpness that contradicted her delicate doll-like facade. Philip. His voice was as smooth as warm honey. What a delightful surprise to encounter you after all these years. Taina, he said, grasping her outstretched hand, I wouldn't have recognized you. A smile danced on his full lips. I suppose I've outgrown the girl who trailed behind you, eager for tales of the bustling metropolis. Absolutely not, he whispered, captivated by her presence. The evening drifted by in a blur for Felipe. He felt an undeniable pull towards Taina, captivated by the way she engaged with the guests. She observed something unsettling in the manner Samuel introduced her to the men at the party, as though he were showcasing a precious gem. What was even more unsettling was the barely hidden unease etched on Taina's expression. Isn't she stunning? Samuel's voice broke through their contemplation as they observed Taina engaging with a cluster of guests. She had always been a stunning girl, Felipe replied with care. She has grown beyond her childhood, Felipe. At 26 years of age, the moment has come for him to step into his role. There was an unsettling quality in Samuel's tone that triggered a warning in Felipe's mind. Is this your location? Samuel guided him to the balcony, seeking refuge from curious listeners. Taina is my sole gem since her mother departed from our lives. I have shielded her and provided her with an education at the finest boarding schools across Europe. It's an absolute treasure, Felipe. Are you aware of just how uncommon that is in today's world? Felipe scowled, a sense of unease creeping in. Samuel, what destination are you considering? My daughter remains untouched, Felipe. A complete gem. I seek the ideal gentleman for her, one who embodies our social standing, possesses affluence and esteem, a union that will ensure her prosperity and broaden our endeavors. The revelation struck Felipe with the force of a blow. Was Samuel discussing his daughter as though she were an object in the modern age? That seems rather outdated, he replied, making an effort to maintain a calm demeanor. Samuel let out a humorless chuckle. The world evolves, Felipe, yet certain traditions hold timeless significance. Marriage alliances continue to hold significant power in contemporary society, much like they did in centuries past. Now we engage in negotiations at charity galas rather than in royal salons. Felipe observed Taina from behind the balcony doors. His social smile barely concealed the sorrow lurking in his eyes. In an instant, the thought of another man reaching for her, asserting his claim, stirred a deep and unexpected response within him, one that caught him off guard with its fervor. "I never thought you would permit your daughter to be maneuvered like a pawn," Felipe remarked. He couldn't hide his disapproval. "Avoid being two-faced, young man. We are all elements on this chessboard. Some hold greater significance than others." Samuel savored a sip of his whiskey. "I have a small request to make of you." Felipe arched an eyebrow. "A request?" "Taina has allocated a portion of his trust fund to a quaint boutique hotel by the coast, a venture driven by sentiment, I fear. You are struggling and require assistance in your business endeavors. So, you expect me to assist her?" Felipe found himself enveloped in a sense of curiosity. "Precisely. Your hotels are renowned for their remarkable achievements. A few weeks of your guidance could protect her investment and keep her occupied while I wrap up plans for her future." Felipe cast his gaze upon Taina once more. Something about her stirred a long-buried protective instinct within her. The prospect of being with her was alluring, yet Samuel's motives cast a shadow over her excitement. "What are her thoughts on these plans for her future?" inquired. Samuel wore a sly grin. "My daughter possesses great intelligence, yet she remains somewhat innocent regarding the complexities of life. Looking for guidance. So you're on board to assist me with his quaint hotel endeavor?" Felipe was aware that he ought to decline. His instincts cautioned him that becoming entangled with Samuel Vasconcelos' daughter would only add layers of complexity to his life, particularly with these outdated marriage plans looming over him. Yet, as Taina gazed at him from the living room, her eyes silently pleading for assistance, he realized he was utterly trapped. "I will," he finally replied, "but only if one condition is met. I will collaborate with her directly, without your involvement." Samuel grinned with the confidence of a cunning hunter. "Absolutely. Your trust means a lot to me." "Expertise." As they shook hands to seal the deal, Felipe sensed he had just embarked on an endeavor far grander than a mere business venture. Their fates were now linked on a path of inevitable confrontation, and an unsettling intuition whispered that neither would come away unhurt. "Not a chance." Taina's voice resonated throughout her father's refined office. "How could you speak of me as if I were merely a vessel for breeding, and to Felipe Diaz of all individuals?" Samuel Vasconcelos stood unfazed by his daughter's rage, adjusting an imaginary crease in his Italian suit with a calm demeanor. "Taina, my dear, you tend to embellish things, as usual. Felipe is available solely for assistance with the hotel. You casually brought up my virginity." Taina's cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and righteous anger. "This is my existence, my autonomy. It is not appropriate for you to share such personal matters with others. I hold every right as your father. Men must understand the worth of what they are purchasing," she finished, quivering with fury. "I am not an object to be owned, Dad." The door swung open unexpectedly, and Felipe stepped in with the assuredness of a person who feels no need for introductions. He paused, feeling the charged atmosphere around him, his keen eyes evaluating the scene with the swiftness of a hunter. "It appears I might be intruding," he remarked with a faint smile. Taina faced him, her eyes blazing with anger. "Did you find the auction last night enjoyable? It was truly intriguing to listen to my father extol my purity as though it were the centerpiece of a showcase." Felipe gazed at her with a piercing intensity before responding. "Your father may have traditional ways, yet his care for you is sincere." "Don't make excuses for him," she retorted. "I anticipated greater things from you, Felipe. Perhaps he ought to have realized that you would resemble the other men in his circle. Did you arrive to examine the goods in greater detail?" A perilous glint flickered in Felipe's eyes. "Choose your words wisely, Taina. I am present solely for professional purposes." Samuel prepared to speak, clearing his throat with a deliberate pause. "I'll let you handle the particulars of the hotel discussion. Taina, please be mindful of your manners." As Samuel departed, an oppressive silence enveloped the space between them. Taina approached the window, battling to restore her poise. "I can manage on my own," he finally whispered. "The numbers from your hotel tell a different story," Felipe replied. "As I neared the desk, I noticed an open portfolio showcasing a collection of financial documents. You are experiencing financial losses each month. If things continue like this, you'll find yourself out of funds before summer arrives." Taina tightened her grip, her fists balling up in determination. The hotel stood as his sole independent endeavor, the singular creation he had forged beyond the influence of his father's legacy. "I can handle this by myself." "What background do you have?" Felipe sifted through the papers. "Your expertise lies in art history, not in managing hotels. This project requires an individual with a strong grasp of the business landscape." "I guess someone like you," she said with a hint of sarcasm. "Just like me." Felipe snapped the briefcase shut and fixed his gaze on her. "I see where you're coming from, but this is the situation we find ourselves in. If you don't accept my assistance, you risk losing your hotel and, along with it, any chance of achieving financial independence from your father." The reality of his words crashed over Taina like a frigid tide. She stayed quiet, loathing the wave of powerlessness that washed over her. 3 months, Felipe persisted, "Allow me 3 months to get your business in order, and if you wish for me to depart after that, I will gladly do so." "And what do you gain from this?" she inquired, with a hint of doubt. A mysterious smile played upon Felipe's lips. "I find the challenge quite enjoyable." Taina realized her choices were limited. "All right, but we will collaborate as equals. You won't take on the role of my superior or my rescuer." "As you desire, my friend." Felipe reached out his hand. Taina shook her gently, disregarding the tingling sensation that coursed through her skin with the touch. "I look forward to meeting you at the hotel tomorrow at 8. In the weeks that followed, the Marina Azul Hotel underwent a remarkable transformation. Felipe came in each morning brimming with fresh concepts, connections, and answers. With a hint of hesitation, Taina acknowledged the worth of her experience. With his guidance, they transformed the rooms, revamped the restaurant menu, and forged alliances with prestigious travel agencies. Taina never expected that Felipe's unwavering presence would stir such deep feelings within her. Observing him channel that fervor and dedication into each nuance stirred unsettling feelings within her. "You're diverting the staff's attention," she remarked one afternoon, observing him engage in lively conversation with one of the waitresses. Felipe arched an eyebrow. "Do you feel envy, Taina?" "That's absurd," he shot back, brushing aside the warmth creeping up his neck. "I'm simply aiming to uphold a professional environment." "Expert," he reiterated, inching perilously closer. "Isn't it amusing how that word seems to slip out whenever you're feeling anxious?" Taina instinctively took a step back. "I feel completely at ease." "Not at all." Felipe gently reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The subtle movement sent a thrill coursing through him. "Your heartbeat suggests otherwise." "I have work to do," he murmured, slipping away toward the office. That night, Taina found herself unable to drift off into slumber. The vision of Felipe, his deep-set eyes appearing to pierce her very soul, remained etched in her thoughts. It was ridiculous to feel drawn to a man who embodied all that she loathed. Hubris, entitlement, dominance. And yet, your daughter has been keeping her distance from me, remarked Felipe as he sipped whiskey with Samuel in his office. It appears he would prefer to forfeit his hotel than to accept my assistance. Samuel chuckled. Taina shares her mother's stubbornness, yet she won't be able to hold out against you for too long. Felipe scowled. Could you clarify that for me? Let's go, Felipe. It's clear that you possess a unique charm that captivates women. Samuel filled his glass with another generous measure of whiskey. This could potentially benefit all parties involved. Taina requires some life experience prior to tying the knot. The subtle hint sparked a rage in Felipe that took him aback with its sheer intensity. If you suggest what I think, Samuel, you are mistaken. I hold no personal interest in your daughter. The deception lingered unpleasantly on his tongue. With each passing day alongside Taina, Felipe found his fixation intensifying. The manner in which she defied his authority, her sharp intellect, her fervor, everything about her drew him in with an irresistible allure. I'm pleased to hear that, Samuel responded, though the expression on his face hinted at a different sentiment. He has just organized a dinner for Taina and Eduardo Montenegro. He has demonstrated a notable fascination with her. The mention of the name sparked an instant response in Felipe. Eduardo Montenegro, scion of a vast oil empire, recognized for his alluring charisma and a string of romantic escapades. The thought of him being close to Taina stirred a fierce instinct within Felipe that he struggled to keep in check. Montenegro is not a good fit for her, he stated with more intensity than he meant to convey. No. He possesses wealth, charm, and comes from a respectable background, precisely the kind of individual I envision for Taina. Felipe finished his whiskey, struggling to express why the notion felt so unbearable. As he departed from the Vasconcelos mansion, a tumult of emotions plagued him. He had vowed to maintain a strictly professional relationship with Taina, yet each passing day made it increasingly difficult to overlook the undeniable chemistry that sparked between them. The following morning, Felipe discovered Taina meticulously going over the reservations at the hotel reception. She donned a simple white dress that accentuated her sun-kissed skin, and for a fleeting moment, she found herself breathless. "Good morning," she remarked, her gaze fixed elsewhere. "Your arrival was delayed." He had obligations to fulfill. Felipe drew closer, observing the way she stiffened at his nearness. "Your father shared some insights about Montenegro with me." Taina finally met his gaze, her eyes sparkling with defiance. "And? It's not for you to concern yourself with who I'm with. It becomes significant when it impacts our operations. Stay focused, distractions are not an option at this moment. Can you take my mind off things? Just as you find it hard to focus whenever a captivating woman comes into view." Felipe moved in, encroaching on her personal space. "Recently, there is just one woman who captures my attention, and she stands before me at this moment." The atmosphere surrounding them crackled with energy. For a fleeting instant, it appeared as though Felipe was poised to lean in and kiss her. Taina paused, caught in a whirlwind of desire and dread, longing for him to take that step while grappling with the implications it would bring. The tranquility shattered as the phone rang. Taina moved aside to take the call, and Felipe observed her, conscious that he was treading on thin ice. Tainavas was fated to belong to another man, a choice made by her father with great care. It was becoming ever more challenging to jog his memory. The rain pounded on the restaurant's windows while Felipe observed Taina articulating her concepts for the hotel's fresh marketing strategy. After 2 hours in the meeting, he found himself drifting, barely catching a word that was spoken. He found himself captivated by her animated gestures, entranced by the rhythmic dance of her lips, and drawn to the delicate crease that appeared between her brows when she focused intently. "Philip. Are you paying attention to what I'm saying?" He blinked, pulling himself back to the here and now. Naturally, the digital campaign targeted European travelers. Taina squinted her eyes in suspicion. "I just discussed our community loyalty initiative." He was contemplating both ideas, responding with a smile that had the power to disarm anyone. It was unsuccessful with her. "If this is dull for you, we can wrap it up now," Taina said, starting to collect her papers. Felipe paused her movement softly, grasping her wrist. "I'm not bored, I'm simply preoccupied." An electric current surged between them. Taina pulled her hand back as though it had been scorched. "Maintaining professionalism is important. Is that truly your desire?" Felipe inclined his body, eager and attentive. "Whenever we share the same space, I sense an unspoken connection between us." "What I feel or don't feel doesn't matter," she replied, her voice taut. "My father has different aspirations for me." "So, you always follow your father's wishes?" For some, the privilege of unveiling one's true self is simply not an option. Not everyone has had the same advantages as you. The word struck him deeply. Entitled? "My father struggled with alcoholism and passed away, leaving us with nothing but burdensome debt. I created everything I possess from the ground up, using only my own hands." Taina relaxed her features. "I apologize, I was unaware." A heavy silence hung in the air between them. Felipe remained silent about his history, about the countless nights he toiled until he could barely stand, about the sacrifices and indignities he faced to reach his current position. "We share more in common than you realize," he finally remarked, "both striving for acknowledgement beyond the confines of our surnames." Taina gave a slow nod. "I suppose that's the case." As they exited the restaurant, the rain had eased off. Felipe was determined to walk her to her car. "Eduardo has invited me to dinner tomorrow," Taina remarked unexpectedly, watching his response closely. Felipe maintained an expressionless demeanor, even as a chill crept down his spine. "So, you went along with it?" "The decision is still pending." "Your father would be pleased if you did," he remarked, loathing each syllable. Taina fixed her gaze on him. "You haven't inquired about what might bring me joy." Felipe advanced a step, softly guiding her against the car. "What would bring you joy, Taina?" His voice had fallen to a raspy murmur. Her breath came in rapid bursts. For a fleeting instant, it seemed he might bridge the gap that separated them, yet he chose to avert his gaze instead. "It's time for me to leave." Felipe stepped back, battling the desire to keep her close. "Absolutely." As he observed her pull away, he realized he was succumbing to an internal struggle. He desired her in a manner that went beyond the mere physical realm. He yearned to claim her entirely. Not only your body, but also your mind and your future. The idea sent chills down his spine. The hotel was starting to exhibit signs of improvement, with a rise in reservations and a growing number of favorable reviews appearing on online platforms. Felipe ought to feel content. Yet, each time he caught a glimpse of Taina's smile reflecting her progress, his mind was consumed with the thought of how much longer he would have to endure her presence. Samuel had ramped up his endeavors to bring Taina and Eduardo together. He consistently extended invitations to social gatherings, crafting scenarios that compelled them to engage with one another. Felipe found himself crafting reasons to attend those events, observing Montenegro's every action with a blend of envy and disdain. "You resemble a caged lion," remarked Carmen, the hotel manager, one afternoon, as Felipe gazed out through the office window. "What are you referring to?" "You glance every 5 minutes towards the terrace, where the young lady, stirring feelings of jealousy, is meeting with that oilman." Felipe scowled. I'm simply ensuring it doesn't divert her attention from her tasks too significantly. Carmen chuckled. Certainly, Mr. Diaz, what makes it so important to be concerned about whom your partner shares a meal with? That man is not as he appears, Felipe whispered. I've come across tales regarding his treatment of women, and really, when did the wolf ever show concern for the lambs? Carmen regarded him with keen insight. Unless this wolf has discovered a specific sheep that he wishes to claim as his own. Felipe remained silent. She was unable to articulate the fury that surged within her as she observed Eduardo leaning in closer to Taina, his fingers brushing against her arm, murmuring sweet nothings that brought a smile to her face. Every one of those smiles pierced like a blade. That evening, in the quiet of his hotel suite, Felipe sought to immerse himself in his work to escape his swirling thoughts. He meticulously examined contracts, scrutinized figures, devised strategies, yet nothing could divert his focus. At last, feeling exasperated, he stepped out onto the balcony, a whiskey clasped in his hand. The shimmering moon cast its glow upon the bay, crafting a radiant trail across the surface of the water. Felipe was struck by a sudden recollection of a conversation with Taina regarding his aspirations. I aspire to create something enduring, she had expressed. An entity that persists in my absence. Something exquisite. The hotel embodied a dream. It transcended mere commerce. It stood as a bold proclamation of freedom. Eduardo Montenegro viewed her merely as a trophy, a decorative accessory for social gatherings. This realization ignited a fierce sense of protectiveness within Felipe. Before he could restrain himself, he pulled out his phone and dialed Taina's number. Philip. His drowsy tone suggested that he had disturbed her slumber. Did something occur at the hotel? No, he replied, a sudden realization dawning on him about the rashness of his decision. I just wanted to check in on you after your lunch with Montenegro. A pause. Did you really call me at midnight for that? It was an error. I apologize. Taina let out a deep breath. Felipe, what's going on? One moment you embody professionalism, and the next. I'm not sure about this, he confessed. Truth weaves through the whiskey and the darkness. You occupy my thoughts endlessly. A prolonged stillness follows. We should have a conversation tomorrow, when we're both clear-headed and well-rested. I'm not intoxicated, Taina. But she had already ended the call. Felipe downed his whiskey, cursing his own frailty. He was acting like a lovesick youth, not the shrewd entrepreneur who had constructed a vast empire. And the most troubling part was that he couldn't, or perhaps wouldn't, bring himself to halt. The event hall of Club Nautico glimmered with golden lights as the elite of Puerto Dorado convened for the annual fundraising gala. Felipe straightened his bow tie, his eyes sweeping the room in search of a particular person. He spotted her beside Eduardo Montenegro, who donned an impeccable tuxedo and a smile that showcased his perfect teeth. Felipe suppressed a growl as he observed the man resting his hand on Taina's lower back, steering her through the throng. If looks could kill, Montenegro would already be attending his own funeral, Samuel whispered, materializing beside Felipe. For someone with no personal stake in my daughter, you appear rather watchful. Felipe accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. My only concern is your well-being as a business partner. Samuel smiled enigmatically in response, though I must admit, I have never witnessed one business partner gaze at another with such desire. The music started, and Felipe felt a surge of annoyance as Eduardo took Taina to the dance floor. The way he held her, overly intimate and possessive, stirred a deep-seated reaction in Felipe. Acting on impulse, he approached them, his demeanor icy as he interrupted their dance. May I have your permission? He inquired, though his hand was already clasping Taina's. Eduardo appeared taken aback, yet he retreated with a polite bow. Certainly, my friend, but do try not to tarry, we have much to converse about, wouldn't you agree, dear? The term of endearment was the final straw. Felipe pulled Taina away from Eduardo, his grip firm and insistent. "What do you think you're doing?" she whispered, yet there was no resistance in her voice. "Dancing with the most enchanting woman at the gathering," he responded, his hand gliding along the curve of her back. "Or would you rather go back to that hunter?" Taina fixed her gaze on him, her eyes piercing. "What does it matter to you who I dance with?" "Because he doesn't perceive you as I do," Felipe whispered softly near her ear. "To him, you are merely a prize, but to me, you are." He paused, suddenly realizing he was on the brink of crossing a threshold from which there would be no turning back. "I'm what?" Taina urged, her eyes glimmering in the soft glow. Felipe gazed at her, ensnared in the depths of his feelings. The intensity of his emotions frightened him. He had never permitted anyone to wield such influence over him as Taina Vasconcelos was starting to do. "You're a threat," he finally replied, with a surprising honesty, to all that he believed he cherished. The gala unfolded around them, yet for Felipe and Taina, time felt suspended as they swayed, ensnared in the depth of their stares. The orchestra filled the air with a gentle melody, offering them the ideal reason to stay entwined in each other's arms. "We should stop," Taina whispered, even as her body inched nearer to Felipe's. "All eyes are on us." "Let them stare," he answered, his hand drifting a bit lower on her back. "Their opinions don't matter to me." The song came to a close, yet Felipe lingered in the moment, reluctant to part ways. When they finally broke apart, Eduardo emerged beside them, a tight smile on his face. "My dance was interrupted," he remarked to Taina, offering his hand. "May I take the rest of the evening?" Before Taina could answer, Eduardo leaned in and lightly pressed his lips to hers. The act, appearing nonchalant yet distinctly intentional, sparked an anger in Felipe that was unfamiliar to him. Without a moment's hesitation, he seized Taina's arm and yanked her away forcefully. "You may excuse us," he said to Eduardo, his voice icy, masking the intensity burning within his gaze. Eduardo's initial surprise faded swiftly, replaced by a look of patronizing amusement. "Naturally, business comes first," he said, although he felt this evening was meant for enjoyment rather than duty. His suggestive tone hinted at the type of enjoyment he had in mind. Felipe guided Taina away from the main hall and onto a terrace bathed in partial moonlight. Several couples were engaged in conversation at the edges, while the center remained vacant. He paused there, finally releasing her arm. "What the hell was that?" Taina confronted him, her eyes sparkling with indignation. "By what authority do you pull me like this in front of everyone? Were you actually going to allow me to kiss you?" Felipe's voice was a barely restrained whisper. "What if he had? Isn't it your concern who I kiss? It is when he does it in my presence." Taina let out a laugh of disbelief. "Are you listening to yourself? You come across as envious, Felipe, and you really shouldn't be. I don't possess it." Felipe advanced, trapping her against the stone balustrade. "You can't honestly say you feel nothing when we're this close. Share with me that I don't cross your mind when you're with him." The challenge loomed between them, thick with anticipation. Taina's breath came in quick bursts, her chest heaving against Felipe's. For a brief instant, he appeared on the verge of surrender, his lips barely separating. "This is absolutely wild," he finally murmured. "You are my father's associate, a person who stands firm in his beliefs. Women speak of you with a certain admiration, Felipe." "You have no idea who I am," he responded, his voice rough with unspoken longing. "No. Let me take a wild guess. You desire me because I'm out of reach, because I'm a puzzle, and once you possess me, your interest will vanish like it has for everyone else." The word struck him deeply, revealing a truth he wasn't ready to confront. He had always yearned for the unattainable, and once achieved, the thrill faded away. "Taina, this is different," he asserted, though a fragment of his mind questioned the truth of his words. "Prove it," she dared him. "Share your true feelings with me, not just what you believe I wish to hear. Felipe parted his lips, yet the words remained trapped within. What could he express? That she occupied his thoughts incessantly? That the thought of another man being close to her sent him into a frenzy? That, for the first time ever, the thrill of pursuit felt insufficient? His silence spoke volumes. Taina slowly felt a wistful smile curling her lips. I thought so. You are a coward, Felipe Diaz, bold in business, but utterly timid when it comes to your emotions. As she began to turn away, Felipe reached out, grasping her arm to halt her movement. His gaze locked onto hers, revealing the turmoil within him. Then, in a sudden burst of resolve, he drew her closer and surrendered to the desire that had consumed him since their first encounter at her father's gala. He kissed her. It wasn't a tender kiss. It was fervent, urgent, brimming with all the repressed frustration and longing. His lips seized hers with a possessiveness that took them both by surprise. And the most astonishing moment was when Taina replied with the same intensity, her hands gripping her jacket as if fearing a plunge. The surroundings faded away. Nothing mattered except the warmth of their bodies, the intoxicating flavor of their lips, and the escalating urgency that enveloped them. Felipe slid one hand down her back, drawing her even nearer, while the other wove through her hair. The moment shattered as voices drew near. Taina pulled away suddenly, her lips plump and her eyes wide with longing. Before Felipe could utter a word, she struck him with enough force to pivot his face. Don't do that again, he managed to say, though the quiver in his voice betrayed his bravado. Felipe caressed his cheek, a gradual smile beginning to emerge on his lips. You kissed me back, Taina, we both know it. A fleeting moment of weakness won't occur again. Yet, Felipe noticed the uncertainty in her eyes, the struggle between longing and logic. You lie, he said softly, and the worst thing is that you lie to yourself. Taina shook her head, retreating. This is precisely what I dreaded. Do you believe that my response to your kiss means you've added another trophy to your collection? It's not like that, Felipe insisted, yet the uncertainty in his tone revealed his inner conflict. Then prove it, she challenged him once more. Share with me what this signifies for you. Beyond mere longing, beyond the thrill of victory. What do you genuinely feel, Felipe? This was the second time she posed that question, and once more he found himself at a loss for words to express his thoughts. Not due to a lack of feeling, but rather because the emotions he experienced filled him with fear. It was simpler to chase after desire, to seek conquest, to embrace the aftermath, the commitment, the vulnerability. That realm was uncharted and fraught with peril. Taina took his silence as an affirmation. Just as I suspected, he uttered with a trembling voice. Farewell, Felipe. We will maintain our professional relationship, but this, he indicated between them, concludes here. He turned and walked away, his posture upright and his head held high. Yet, Felipe noticed the slight quiver in his shoulders. I felt an urge to chase after her, to halt her in her tracks. But what could I possibly give him? Hollow words. Vows that might slip through my fingers. He lingered on the terrace, the memory of his kiss lingering like a flame on his lips, fully conscious that he had just committed the gravest error of his existence. You let me down, Felipe, Samuel remarked as he poured 2 whiskeys in his office later that evening. I expected more from you. I'm not sure what you mean, Felipe replied, but the guilt etched on his face betrayed him. My daughter came back from the gala in tears. Eduardo mentioned your little performance, and half of the attendees witnessed them vanish on the terrace. Samuel passed him the glass. I cautioned you to keep your distance from her in that sense. Felipe savored a lengthy sip, appreciating the warmth that coursed down his throat. Yet, nothing changed. We both know that's not true, Samuel fixed his gaze on him with intensity. Taina stands apart from the women you typically encounter, Felipe. She is neither a model nor an actress chasing after fame. He is innocent, vulnerable despite his apparent strength. You underestimate her, Felipe replied. Taina knows precisely what she desires. And what is it that she desires, in your opinion? Samuel lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. For you. A figure who has woven a tapestry of shattered affections throughout the land. Taina is entitled to a sense of stability and security. A man who cherishes her for something deeper than a fleeting victory. The words resonated painfully, a haunting reminder of what Taina herself had once said. Is that truly their perspective? Like a hunter devoid of true emotions? My interest in Taina is genuine, he stated, infusing his words with a confidence he struggled to truly embody. Samuel let out a dry laugh. Felipe, I have known you since your lean days, filled with ambition yet short on funds. Your acumen in business has always shown, yet your relationships have often faltered. I refuse to let my daughter become part of your quest to find out if you are capable of love. Felipe gripped the glass firmly. That choice isn't yours to make. No, it belongs to you. And the manner in which he returned suggests that he has already claimed it. Samuel drained his whiskey. Release her, Felipe. It's the ideal choice for all. Life will carry on for you just as it always has. She will discover joy with someone who can provide her with a genuine future. The thought of Taina entwined with another man, crafting a life together, raising children, and aging side by side, pierced his heart like a twisting dagger. Yet, what other option might he present? I will complete the hotel project, he declared, rising to his feet. In that case, I shall take my leave. I give you my assurance. Samuel nodded, content with the outcome. You have always been a man of great intellect, Felipe. Upon departing the Vasconcelos mansion, Felipe experienced a profound sense of emptiness like never before. What was it about the thought of going back to his former life, a life he had once cherished, that now felt so dismal? Taina observed the rain as it pelted her window, her quiet tears blending seamlessly with the droplets that cascaded down the glass. She felt foolish, defenseless, laid bare. He had permitted Felipe Diaz, of all individuals, to breach his defenses. And now he faced the consequences. The most painful part was that he couldn't shake off the memory of that kiss. The way his lips had captured hers, the security of his hands, the warmth he had ignited within her. He had never experienced anything quite like this before, and he questioned whether he would ever encounter it again. A gentle rap on his door broke the silence of his contemplation. Go ahead, she said, hastily brushing away her tears. His father stepped in, his expression a portrait of paternal worry. My girl, he murmured, settling beside her on the bed. I apologize for the events that unfolded this evening. Taina felt a tightness in her muscles. What do you really know? That's enough. Samuel grasped her hand. Felipe has committed to completing the project and departing. It's simply the finest, my dear. That man isn't the right choice for you. The news was meant to bring her comfort, yet it only deepened the sense of an abyss yawning beneath her feet. Did he really say that? What might disappear? Samuel gave a slight nod. He admitted that it was an error. Felipe possesses a multitude of qualities, yet foolishness is not among them. He is aware of his errors. An error. The words pierced his heart like fragments of frozen pain. To him, it was merely an error. A fleeting lapse in strength. Taina held her posture firm, resolute in her effort to shield her father from witnessing the extent of her emotions. You are correct, he stated with conviction. It was an error. It's preferable for him to depart once the project reaches completion. Samuel wore a contented smile, clearly pleased. I appreciate your understanding. In the meantime, Eduardo has conveyed his interest in deepening his acquaintance with you. He is a decent person, Taina. Reliable, esteemed, and full of potential ahead. I need time, Dad, she replied, her mind clouded by the memory of Felipe's lips still haunting her own. "Certainly, my dear. Take all the time you require." As her father departed, Taina gazed out the window once more. The rain had ceased, unveiling a pristine sky adorned with twinkling stars. He recalled a piece of wisdom his mother shared with him before her passing. "Genuine love is always a challenge, my dear. If a person isn't prepared to stand up for you, they simply don't merit your presence in their life." Felipe Diaz had not stood up for her. Confronted with his initial significant challenge, he opted to step back. "That was everything I required to understand." Suppressing the tears that threatened to overflow once more, Taina resolved to take action. If he could act as if nothing had transpired, then so could she. Tomorrow, she would confront him with confidence, embodying the professional spirit she possessed. Unlike the naive girl who had momentarily thought that someone like Felipe Diaz could genuinely care for her. The day following the gala, Taina entered the hotel with unwavering resolve. Her sleek black pantsuit and flawless makeup concealed any remnants of her tears from the night before. If Felipe sought professionalism, he would certainly achieve it. She discovered him in his office, sifting through papers, and as she stepped inside, a fleeting spark flickered in his eyes before he cloaked it with a veneer of indifference. "Good morning," she said with an even tone. "The meeting with the investors is scheduled for 11. Have you reviewed the forecasts?" "They're perfect," Felipe replied, gazing at her as though he anticipated an additional revelation. "Good." Taina maintained a careful distance. "I require your signature on these contracts." "Taina, last night, there's no room for discussion." He cut him off. "It was an error that will not occur again. We have a hotel to manage." A shift in his demeanor signaled a newfound resolve. "Only business, then." "Only business." She acknowledged it, pushing aside the ache in her chest. The days that followed unfolded in a chill of polite distance. They operated with precision, yet the spark that once ignited their connection had faded. Felipe grew aloof, often found lingering outside the hotel under the pretense of meetings. In the meantime, Eduardo Montenegro escalated his pursuit. Each day brought a fresh bouquet, accompanied by invitations to various dinners and gatherings. Taina, feeling the sting of Felipe's seeming indifference, ultimately consented to a second date. The night spent with Eduardo was enjoyable, at least on the surface. He exuded charm and attentiveness, embodying the qualities she should desire. Yet, Taina couldn't help but measure him against Felipe. "What are you thinking?" Eduardo inquired, gently grasping her hand. "You appear preoccupied." "The hotel occupies all my thoughts these days," he said with an apology. "Ah, your small endeavor with Diaz." Eduardo smiled with a hint of superiority. "It must be intriguing to pretend at business." The remark sparked a flicker of annoyance. "I'm not engaged in any games. The hotel is my enterprise, my fervor." "Certainly, my dear," he responded in a calming manner. "I just wanted to mention that soon your focus will shift. Once we tie the knot." "Tie the knot?" Taina suddenly pulled her hand away. "I believe you're jumping ahead a bit." Eduardo appeared truly taken aback. "Your father made it clear that you were open to the idea of a serious commitment." Anger simmered inside Taina. Samuel Vasconcelos was never one to waste a moment. "My father doesn't speak for me," he declared with conviction. "I notice you still possess a certain fire," Eduardo remarked, his smile sharpening with a hint of strategy. "I appreciate that. The achievement feels all the more rewarding." A shiver coursed through Taina's spine. In that instant, he perceived Eduardo with clarity. It was not unlike what he dreaded in Felipe. They perceived love as a triumph to be achieved. "I believe it's time to wrap things up for the evening," he remarked, getting ready to rise from his seat. Felipe stared at his computer screen, the numbers blurring into a haze of indifference. His thoughts lingered on Taina and Eduardo during their outing. The sight of them together drove him to the brink of insanity. He had devoted the week to immersing himself in work and the company of women, seeking to escape his emotions. The evening prior, I dined with a global fashion icon. She possessed a captivating beauty, sharp intellect, and an eagerness to share the night with him. And yet, when the moment arrived, Philip turned away, unable to pretend he cared. The reality struck him repeatedly. No woman could compare to Taina. No one possessed his passion, his resolve, his concealed fragility wrapped in layers of resilience. The click of heels caught his attention. Taina stepped into his office, still clad in her date attire, though her hairstyle appeared a bit disheveled. "What brings you here at this hour?" she inquired, taken aback. "Work," he replied, masking his true feelings with a veneer of indifference. "And you? I imagined you would be occupied." A shadow passed over Taina's face. The appointment concluded ahead of schedule. "Did something occur?" he asked. "Eduardo turned out to be precisely the sort of man I expected," he responded with a hint of dryness. "Just like you." The comparison pierced him to the core. "What did he do?" Taina paused, contemplating. "I behave as though I belong to him, a possession secured through discussions with my father." Something in her tone piqued Felipe's suspicions. "Did he hurt you?" "It doesn't matter," she replied, yet her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Instantly, fury welled up within Felipe. "Yes, it was your turn." "I don't need you to defend me," Taina exclaimed. "That's the issue with you men. Always thinking you can make decisions for me, battle for me, possess me." Her words halted him completely. He realized the truth. They stood in silence, uncomfortably close. Their breaths intertwined in the thick atmosphere surrounding them. "Should I leave?" she finally murmured. "Wait." Felipe grasped her hand gently. "I'm not sure I can be the man you truly deserve." A wistful smile graced Taina's lips. "I never requested you to change. All I sought was your truth." "I'm frightened," he confessed. "Afraid of what I feel, because I have never felt anything like this." Taina's eyes glimmered with a fleeting softness before they turned steely. "Words, Felipe. If you truly felt something, you would stand by me instead of handing me over to someone else. Do you believe I'm not fighting?" "It's not enough," she responded. "You assured me you would walk away once the project concluded. Is that what you call fighting?" Felipe remained silent. She had surrendered at the first obstacle, convincing herself it was the wisest choice for her. "You are a coward," Taina said, her voice trembling. "And I'm exhausted from waiting for you to discover your bravery." He got ready to walk away. Yet Felipe drew her close and pressed his lips against hers. Not out of desperation, but with a softness that laid bare the intensity of his emotions. For a fleeting moment, Taina reciprocated. But then he withdrew and delivered a slap that resonated in the vacant office. "Don't toy with me," she said, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I am not a fleeting victory. I deserve someone who will stand by me against the world, not someone who flees at the first sign of trouble." With that, he walked away, leaving Felipe with the painful realization that he was losing the one thing that truly mattered to him. The upcoming social event in Puerto Dorado was the opening of a new shopping center. Taina arrived, radiant in a gold dress, with Eduardo always by her side, his hand firmly resting on her waist. Felipe observed them from afar, each smile and every touch igniting a smoldering intensity within him. He had dedicated the week to confronting his fears, coming to terms with reality. He was captivated by Taina Vasconcelos. And I was spiraling. With a surge of resolve, he approached them, breaking into their dialogue. "Could you give me a moment with my partner?" he inquired of Eduardo. "Matters concerning the hotel." Felipe guided Taina to a secluded corner. She regarded him with a wary look. I've been reflecting on our situation, on my true desires, he started. There is no situation for us, Felipe, she replied, folding her arms defensively. Frustration welled up inside him. Acting on impulse, he pulled her from the room and into an empty hallway. What are you doing? She objected. Everyone will see us. Let them see, he replied passionately, let the world know how deeply I adore you, how I can't function without thoughts of you. Before she could voice any objections, he kissed her with fervor, asserting his feelings, vowing everything with that single act. In a breathtaking instant, Taina fully yielded, matching his fervor with her own. As they pulled apart, she softly nudged him away and delivered a light slap, a gesture rich with meaning. You must either fight for me wholeheartedly or leave for good, she declared, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. All or nothing. He made his way back to the event, the ultimatum echoing in Felipe's mind. Alone in the empty hallway, Felipe felt the sting of Taina's slap still lingering on his cheek, but the deeper ache came from the hollow sensation of watching her turn away. All or nothing. The phrase reverberated in his thoughts, a ceaseless refrain. For the first time, the famed conquistador Felipe Diaz confronted a predicament for which he had no plan. He re-entered the gathering with a stoic expression, yet within him churned a tempest of conflicting feelings. From afar, he spotted Taina beside Eduardo, her stance tense, her smile strained. Samuel Vasconcelos observed the tableau with clear delight, akin to a strategist pondering his next decisive play. You look a bit disoriented, Carlos remarked, reappearing beside her. What's going on? Felipe picked up a glass of champagne from a passing tray. He issued me an ultimatum, and that frightens you? It terrifies me, he confessed, taken aback by his own candor. Why? Carlos regarded him with sincere intrigue. You possess all the trappings of success, wealth, influence, but lack what truly counts. Felipe observed Taina chuckling at something Eduardo had remarked, even though her eyes were hidden from view. I struggle with love, Carlos. My father instilled in me ambition and skepticism. It's not something we're born understanding, my friend. It is acquired, much like any other skill. The words lingered in the atmosphere as Felipe turned away, unable to pursue that dialogue, while every part of him urged him to rush to Taina and pull her from Eduardo's embrace. He spent the night restless in his hotel room, scrutinizing his existence as if it were one of his property ventures. When had he transformed into this man incapable of emotional connection? Why did success, once his ultimate aspiration, now feel so empty? The answer emerged with the break of day. He had constructed his existence on the belief that love was a vulnerability, that strong men did not fall in love, they merely dominated. How many times had he witnessed his father shattered by his mother's departure? Love renders you weak, he had confided to her amidst tears and whiskey. Never let a woman wield that kind of influence over you. Felipe had absorbed that lesson so deeply it transformed into both his armor and his confinement. Now, for the first time, he questioned whether he had misinterpreted it all. Perhaps love was not a sign of weakness, but rather the ultimate strength. Maybe his father had not faltered from loving too deeply, but rather from not understanding how to love in the right way. In the meantime, Taina grappled with her own inner turmoil. Following the encounter with Felipe, he kept his cool throughout the remainder of the event, wearing a blank smile and reacting on autopilot. However, once he stepped through the door at home, the tears came pouring out. The next morning, an unexpected call arrived. Mariana Suarez, a longtime friend from university who managed a series of eco-friendly hotels in Costa Rica, presented a remarkable opportunity, a partnership to establish a new resort within a nature reserve. It's precisely what you've always envisioned, Mariana exclaimed with excitement. Sustainable luxury, in perfect harmony with nature. And the most enticing aspect was the distance from your father's influence. The offer was alluring. A fresh start, away from Puerto Dorado, away from Felipe, away from the stifling demands of Samuel. The freedom she had always yearned for. I need time to contemplate, Taina replied, though she could already sense the seed of choice taking root within her. That afternoon, her father called her to his office. Eduardo Montenegro stood there, impeccably dressed, his smile not quite reaching the calculating depths of his eyes. Taina dear, Samuel began, his tone artfully casual. Eduardo has something significant to discuss with you. What ensued was a proposal veiled as a romantic plea. Eduardo articulated visions of uniting fortunes, of building a familial legacy, of bestowing upon Samuel the grandchildren he yearned for. At no moment did he invoke love, passion, or mutual joy. Taina gazed at them both, her certainty radiating, her conviction in compliance unwavering, and something within her shattered at last. No, he stated plainly. Eduardo stared, bewildered. Excuse me. My response is a firm no. His voice grew more resolute with every syllable. I will not become your wife, Eduardo. Not now, not ever. Samuel rose to his feet, his face flushed with fury. Taina, this is absurd. This arrangement seems ideal for all involved. For everyone except me, she responded, surprisingly composed. I have been presented with a business opportunity in Costa Rica. I'm going to accept it. That? Samuel's expression was one of disbelief. Are you really going to leave your hotel? Everything we've created here. The hotel is flourishing because of Felipe. As for what we have created. Taina fixed her gaze on her father. You have constructed a gilded prison. I have fashioned wings to break free from it. He exited the office, not glancing back, dismissing his father's cries and Eduardo's shocked quietude. She felt buoyant, unshackled, as though she had released a burden she had borne for years. Only one matter remained to be settled. Felipe Diaz felt the weight of Costa Rica's offer hit him like a physical blow. Carlos shared the rumor that had been making its rounds in business circles. Taina Vasconcelos is set to depart Puerto Dorado to embark on a new venture overseas. It's a remarkable opportunity for her, Carlos remarked. Meanwhile, Samuel is seething with anger. He seemingly turned down Montenegro's marriage proposal. These final words ignited a flicker of hope in Felipe's heart. Taina had said no to Eduardo. He had turned away from the secure route, the option endorsed by his father. Did that imply? No. He halted his thoughts. He could no longer view Taina's actions through the lens of his desires. She had the right to forge her own journey, unbound by her father's expectations or her own. It was at that moment he faced the hardest choice of his life. If he truly cared for her, he needed to demonstrate it through actions, not just words. Sometimes, love required putting aside one's own desires for the sake of another's happiness. He discovered her at the hotel, poring over documents in her office. As she glanced up and caught sight of him at the door, her eyes betrayed a storm of conflicting feelings. I heard you were leaving, he remarked, stepping inside with deliberate slowness. Taina nodded. Costa Rica. A fresh endeavor. A new chapter unfolds. Is it what you truly desire? Is it what I require? She replied, locking eyes with him. A chance to exist as my own person, free from the weight of my father's expectations, or yours. Felipe felt the impact of her words, yet he nodded in understanding. I get it, and I want you to know that I'm here for you. Taina looked taken aback. Do you really support me? After everything I shared last night? Especially after that. Felipe settled into his chair, looking directly at her. Taina, I've spent the night confronting the truths I've long evaded. Above all, I need you to know that I love you. The words flowed effortlessly, as though they had existed all along, eager to be voiced. Taina paused, her breath caught. His vivid gaze. Yet, I understand that genuine love involves wishing for someone else's joy, even when that joy doesn't encompass us. Felipe took a deep breath. If Costa Rica is your dream, pursue it wholeheartedly. Embrace the freedom, without any constraints or expectations. Philip. I'm not finished, he interrupted her gently. To demonstrate that these are not mere words, I have made a decision. She finalized the contract with Grupo Landero, which would turn this area into a luxury resort, threatening the nearby nature reserve, fully aware of the project that Felipe had been negotiating. This morning, I turned it down, he stated plainly. I understand the significance of that reservation to you. I recognize the lengths you have gone to in order to safeguard her. Taina's expression was one of disbelief, yet that contract held a value in the millions. It represented the pinnacle of your career. And you are the most precious discovery I've made in my life. Felipe smiled with a hint of sorrow. I'm not requesting that you remain for my sake. I merely wanted you to realize that I've finally grasped the lesson you were imparting, that sometimes, the real strength lies in understanding what to let go of. He rose to depart, sensing he had expressed all that was necessary. Yet, just as he approached the door, Taina's voice halted him. Felipe, why now? Why not earlier? He turned gradually, his eyes revealing a depth of openness and vulnerability unlike anything seen before. As I grappled with my own pace of learning, it became clear that losing you was the catalyst for realizing your true significance in my life. The silence that enveloped Felipe's words held the weight of their entire future. Taina observed him, her heart laid bare, filled with both vulnerability and trepidation, anxious that this transformed version of Felipe might slip away. Take a seat, he finally said. There's much more to discuss. Did you truly turn down the contract with Landero? He inquired, looking for honesty in her gaze. This morning, he confirmed, and Daniel was in disbelief. He proposed a raise in compensation, yet I explained it wasn't merely about the money. So, what was it truly about? It was about you, about us, about the person I aspire to be when I'm with you. Taina gazed out the window, where the sun illuminated the bay. My father visited after I turned down Eduardo. For the first time, he truly saw me, not as his belonging, but as an individual with my own aspirations. What did he say? He sought my forgiveness. He expressed that after losing my mother, he became so fearful of losing me that he attempted to take charge of my life. He mistook protection for possession. At times, fear leads us to commit grave errors with those we cherish. Taina confessed to me, I was so terrified of becoming just another conquest that I constructed insurmountable barriers. And now? Now I hold the belief that two flawed individuals can discover something extraordinary together. Felipe reached out his hand across the table. Taina laced her fingers with his. What about Costa Rica? He inquired. I need time to think it over. It's an amazing opportunity, but so is what we're creating here. Text, I refuse to let you abandon your aspirations. Should you choose to leave, we will discover a path. The path? To unite, he replied. Daily flights connect Puerto Dorado and San Jose. I could broaden my offices in Costa Rica or embark on a new venture there. Would you leave behind everything you've created for me? Would I sacrifice anything to create something together? He replied, with truth illuminating his gaze. Structures, accommodations, enterprises, can be substituted. Not you. Her tears finally spilled over. I never imagined I would express this, but I believe I'm in love with you, Felipe Diaz. And I am utterly in love with you, Taina Vasconcelos. The reopening of the Marina Azul Hotel has turned into the most talked about social event of the year. Under the collaborative vision of Taina and Felipe, it emerged as a beacon of sustainable luxury, featuring revamped rooms, a gourmet restaurant that celebrated local ingredients, and initiatives dedicated to environmental preservation. On the night of its grand opening, the terrace radiated with gentle illumination. The elite of Puerto Dorado convened to experience the hotel's renaissance and the remarkable evolution of Felipe Diaz. Are you wagering on how long this will endure? Taina murmured as they twirled. The mayor's wife predicts 3 months. Felipe chuckled. And what do you think, how much will you offer me? I give you my entire existence, she replied. And I worry it won't suffice. Samuel observed them in wonder. She would never have selected Felipe for her daughter, yet the change they had both undergone together was unmistakable. In a serene moment, Felipe led Taina to a secluded spot with a view of the sea. From his pocket, he retrieved a small box. It's not a ring, he clarified upon noticing her expression. Not yet. I understand we are merely at the start of this journey. It unveiled a delicate pendant shaped like an antique key. This is the key to our first joint property, he explained, presenting a second identical pendant. A plot adjacent to the nature reserve. I envisioned creating something special in that space. Not just a hotel, but a true home. Taina took it and made it her own. It was an unconventional promise, a vow to create a shared future. It's perfect, she whispered, as he fastened it around her neck. They exchanged a silent gaze, fully aware of the journey they had undertaken together. Two proud individuals who discovered that genuine strength resided in their willingness to be vulnerable together. I love you, Felipe expressed, uttering words that once felt unimaginable to him. Not with flawless idealism, but with every quirk and flaw, with your tenacity that mirrors my own, with your anxieties that echo my own. I cherish you because together we are invincible. Taina pressed her lips to his, sealing their vow beneath the night sky. In the most unexpected of circumstances, they discovered a love that surpassed every anticipation, even their own.